The specific purpose of delivering the report of the task force to the mayor and to the city. The mayor, as everyone in this room, certainly seated close to me knows, appointed us and charged us and expected that we would report back. And that is the purpose for which we convened today. Rather than take a formal call of the roll, I thought that we might actually have everyone on the task force present identify themselves for the record, and we'll begin with Hal Cato.
Hal Cato, CEO of Physical Farms, from small business.
Heather Powell, CEO of the Foundation, I was on the Housing Subcommittee.
My name is Mark Deutschman, and I was representing ULI as chairman of ULI, and I was on the Finance Subcommittee.
Good afternoon. Marshall Crawford with the Housing Fund, and I was on the Finance Committee, Subcommittee as well.
And I'm Pete Wooten with Pinnacle Financial Partners. I was on the Development and Finance Subcommittee.
I'm Brent Elrod with Urban Housing Solutions. I was on the Development and Finance Subcommittee.
Good afternoon. I'm Ashley Northington with Denora Brands and Public Relations, and I was the team lead for the Small Business Subcommittee.
Good afternoon. I'm Hank Helton with Pathway Lending, and I was the team lead on the Development and Finance Subcommittee.
Bob Mendez, chair of the Council's Ad Hoc Affordable Housing Committee, and I was the lead for the Neighborhoods and Preservation of Housing Subcommittee.
I'm Paulette Coleman. I chair the NOAA Affordable Housing Task Force, and I served as a member of the Neighborhoods and Preservation of Housing Subcommittee.
I'm Jim Fraser. I'm at Vanderbilt University, and we served on the Neighborhood and Housing Preservation Committee.
State Representative Harold Love Jr. I was on the committee.
And we were certainly happy to have you on the committee.
Bill Phillips, Windrow Phillips Group, and I was on the Small Business Subcommittee.
Pearl Sims with the HL Coalition and the Planning Commission, and I was on the Finance and Development Committee.
I'm Lilian Yepes, and I'm with La Hacienda Mexican Restaurant.
I'm Bill Purcell, and I'm an attorney here in Nashville, and I'm a co-chair together with Brenda Wynn, our county clerk.
I'm Brenda Wynn, and I served as the co-chair with Bill Purcell, and I'm your Davidson County clerk. And it's a great honor to be here today.
The mayor's charge to us has been clear from the start. It's been constantly referred to by the committee, and it is contained again in the agenda of the task force. We were to offer policy, project, and programmatic recommendations to help Nashville's decision makers, many of whom are in this room, certain numbers of whom are a part of this task force, help them make planned high-capacity transit corridors safe and inclusive for everyone, improve the economic prospects and equity of these areas, and provide new opportunities for housing and commerce, all while avoiding displacement of the vital communities of residents and businesses that call these corridors home today. And there was no one better, from my perspective, to be a co-chair of this task force than the first director of the Mayor's Office of Neighborhoods, Brenda Wynn, and to help the record be clear as to how we went about that a particular charge, I'd ask Brenda to pick up here.
Thank you, Bill. Let me open by saying how grateful I am to have been a part of this process, and how grateful I am to all of you who sit around this table. These folks did the heavy lifting. They worked tirelessly to get this process done. We started in November, November 8th, in fact, and worked for a little over 9 weeks. And in that time, we initially met November 8th with our first meeting. We went from that meeting and met on November 15th with a housing and affordability displacement prevention subtopic, where we learned and heard from mayor's staff on best practices that were being used in that area across the nation. We met on November 29th, and we looked at small business displacement and prevention. And we met again on Friday, December 8th. And let me just say that our meetings were open. It wasn't just committee members who were there and around the table. We had citizens who joined us at every meeting. And so to all of you who sit in this room now and who were present at those meetings, we were certainly glad to have you there. We were delighted to have your input, and we thank you for being a part of this process. We met again on December 15th. We met December 28th, January 4th, and finally we're here today.
Yes.
all of the work that went on in the subcommittees is a culmination of all of the efforts of these folks around this table. And again, they did the heavy lifting. This is a very knowledgeable group, and I am excited about the recommendations we will share with the mayor today.
I would join with Brenda in thanking all the members of the task force. There are many other people to thank, but in the interest of time, if we could thank you at the end of the proceedings, that would allow the mayor to go on. She knows how thankful she is for especially the people from her staff who have been so supportive of us. But we will do that and begin, Mayor, if we might, by formally presenting the report to you, which is now before you, but we think for the purpose of your hearing about what's contained within the report, each of the leads of the subcommittees is here and prepared to describe both the work of the subcommittee, the separate subcommittee reports, and you'll find the most important of those recommendations adopted by the task force contained in the earlier materials. So if we might begin with Councilmember Bob Mendez, who has a separate role as chair of the Metro Council's Ad Hoc Committee on Affordable Housing, but has been the lead on our subcommittee.
And before you do that, Councilman, I just want to make sure, is Channel 3, are you able to pick up the audio? So I want to make sure that you guys can hear. Okay. Okay, great, because I know that I want this to be heard. Okay, great, thank you.
All right, thank you. So our group was called the Neighborhoods and Preservation of Housing Subcommittee, and for the purpose of this task force, transit and affordability, we felt like we were at the core of trying to describe the problem, the challenges, and potential solutions. Our basic assumptions were that there's a shared goal that Nashville desires, wants to have economically and racially diverse neighborhoods throughout the entire city where families can be safe and thrive. But we do have an affordable housing crisis now. And I think it's well documented that transit development creates potential for more displacement. And so the challenges are, over the course of a 15-year plan, how do we make it so we avoid unwanted, unhealthy further displacement from transit development? And beyond that, how do we make it so transit is part of affordable housing solution in Nashville and the whole county? So we talked a lot about the idea of whether there should be specific hard goals in terms of units to build or dollars to spend, and we kept bumping into the idea that over 15 years, that would be very hard, very difficult to predict, say in 2028, what exactly the need is in the city. So at the highest level, we stated the goal, and I think the whole task force has signed on to this, that transit development needs to be an affordable housing solution and not an affordable housing problem. That the goal is for Nashville, during the 15 years that we have the transit development underway, will solve its affordable housing problem and eliminate the shortage of units over the course of that 15 years. Not all specifically from transit development, but during that time period. Getting more granular, there's a strong feeling that before any transit line is started, the high-capacity transit line is started, that there should be firm, fixed, known goals for number of units to be preserved and created along the transit line. So while today we couldn't say in 2020-something how many units we would want to create and preserve, say, along Nolensville Road, by the time that line was going to start, we ought to be able to have firm, fixed goals. Also, because the transit plan is expected to cover multiple administrations going 15 years, it's really important that we not lose knowledge. There's lots of great professionals on your staff. We can't start over again every time there's a new administration. So building resilient processes that will have continuous improvement through the course of the 15 years is very important. And then the last of the really high-level suggestions that Hank Helton's going to go into more detail about is the idea of dedicated funding above and beyond current funding levels. Some of the couple just of the details about process. We felt, and you'll see this in the recommendations, it's very important that there be an early neighborhood-by-neighborhood assessment of what the starting place is for affordable units, so that when we do an annual scorecard going forward, we'll be able to have something to get some feedback. Without having a good assessment at the front end, we'll have a hard time knowing how to score progress. we felt very important that there be strong private-public partnerships. We feel like there needs to be a balance between making sure private industry has a fair profit, but still doing the incentivizing to cover the unit housing gap that we've got now. And finally, the last specific thing I'll mention is strong feeling that government through the course of the 15 years needs to be a help, not a hindrance. And so there's things like making sure that affordable housing developers get a front-of-line preference when they're dealing with codes and zoning would be important. Making sure that the historically somewhat separated MDHA and metro planning processes get streamlined, so we've got a process, not two processes. And then again, back to this idea of institutionalizing it to make sure that the experience for creating affordable housing on these transit lines is the same experience in 2021 and 25 and 29. So we had a pretty big focus on wanting to make sure that we had a good process in place. And I think that summarizes it.
Okay. Hank Helton led the subcommittee on development and finance.
Thank you, Mr. Purcell. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone that participated in the subcommittee meetings, both that are on the task force and then members of the general public that attended. It really added a lot to the process, and as Brenda mentioned, this has been a very public process. I think it's been a very good process, and in a very short period of time, I think we were able to accomplish a lot. So again, I appreciate everyone that participated, not only on the subcommittee, but also from the general public's perspective. So we accepted the challenge of trying to come up with ways to recommend about how we could finance and build programs and developments to include opportunities for residents and businesses, not only to stay in these corridors, but also how do we promote additional affordable housing development as well as additional opportunities for entrepreneurship through small business development resources, whether it be through the development of actually what we would call affordable or living affordable working space for entrepreneurs, as well as various technical assistance programs that go along to help support that. And Ashley will speak a little bit more in detail on that as part of her work on the Small Business Committee. So, but paramount to what we were talking about from a development and finance perspective is establishing a dedicated source of public revenue to fund these types of projects. The big issue that we always have considered is how do we create something that's going to be a recurring source of revenue, so we have some pool of money that will always be available regardless of its size or where we're at with it, but that will be able to be leveraged with other additional resources, because alone the public funds just can't do this. So our big suggestion will be the new public funding resource should be an amount equivalent to at least 2% of the expected project cost for the Let's Move Nashville program. That's supposedly in the amount of about $5.4 billion in 2017 uninflated monies. This new resource is going to be designed, it'll be leveraged with what we hope to be a goal of at least 3 to 1. So for every $1 of public money, we will attract $3 of private funds into this. And we're going to do that through a variety of different ways, utilizing local financial institutions, philanthropic and other socially responsible investors, as well as our strong community development financial institution community that we have here on both the affordable housing and small business development side. So with that said, we're going to take that, and then we're going to go, another goal was to create a flexible set of financing and development tools to preserve and build affordable commercial and residential space, as I said. Again, all the while looking for a dedicated source of revenue and additional funding sources that we can funnel into these corridors to help not only promote more activity on the affordable housing side to help ease our affordable housing situation here in Nashville throughout our community, but also to provide real opportunities for people to live closer to where they work and be able to get to where they work, more importantly. So we came up with several ideas, and they're addressed in the report, about ways these organizations that can work together. Basically, we're focusing the recommendations on, again, financing methods and development policies, limiting displacement, and encouraging affordability in ways that minimize the burden of costs for low and moderate income families and create healthy, vibrant communities. And this could include everything from affordable housing development, community facility development, again, like I said, commercial retail workspace, as well as healthy foods initiatives, which there's some resources that are out there available as well. And then the final recommendation or goal that we had was to look at our other additional public resources for financing, typically related to tax increment financing and payment in lieu of taxes, and to really figure out a way to revolutionize or maximize and how we can leverage those with transit-oriented development districts, prioritizing high-quality affordable housing and affordable commercial space to incubate essential services in these communities. So.
Mayor, your charge included commerce specifically, and the members that you appointed came from small business and across commerce and business in Nashville, and we were especially blessed to have Ashley Northington, who made sure that small business was not just at the table, but always part of the conversation, and she led our effort in that way.
Thank you. So I think the main challenge for the Small Business Subcommittee was to make sure that any transit development didn't become an opportunity for some and a disadvantage for others. With that in mind, we wanted to approach this work by ensuring that not only were we able to make recommendations that would allow for the preservation of neighborhoods and the character of those neighborhoods, but also, as Hank mentioned, how we can attract new people to come and become a part of those neighborhoods. So when we're looking at what our goals were going to be for how we would potentially move forward, we wanted to look at 6 primary areas, and I'll tell you what key points of those 6 areas were. The first is outreach and communication. And the main thing there is that we want to make sure that everybody in every quarter is aware of what's happening and how it affects them. So we want to create some sort of informative packet or resource line so that people can, when they have questions or when they have challenges, they have a point person that they can reach out to. They can go online, they can go on social media and get the necessary information that's going to help them. Outreach and communication is probably, in advance of construction and during is going to be critical. Secondly, we want to look at parking assistance. So during construction, we know that things are going to change and move around. So we want to make sure that business owners and their employees and their customers have places to park and places to be. We want to make sure that we help them with that so that there's not a lot of displacement there. We want to look at access enhancement, signage, and pedestrian walkways. So as things are changing and developing, we want to make sure that things are very clear for people to navigate and get around. And one big thing, of course, is technical assistance through partners. So we know that in Nashville, we have a myriad of partners who offer resource and technical assistance, financial assistance, and we want to make sure that we connect with those resource partners who can support small businesses in terms of technical assistance to help them grow, to help them stay open, to help them work through the challenges, and then also with funding and rental assistance programs for a term period. Again, as Hank mentioned, we want to offer them we want to recommend to offer them financial assistance for a fixed term under certain conditions and establish a fund for business development and support. Additionally, we want to look at sustained multi-partner advocacy and organizing. So here we want to make sure that there is an opportunity for small businesses, other organizations, maybe faith-based organizations, community groups, and individuals to assist with advocating for the voice of businesses when possible as we move through this process. Again, it's all about making sure that people are included and the process is inclusive and that people are informed as they move along.
Let me say, I think, Mayor, it's especially important for you to know that there was truly broad consensus within this task force as to the procedural and the substantive proposals that are being made. Now, as you look at the subcommittee reports, you will note, as we have in our letter, that about everything, not everyone agrees.
Right.
If there's anyone in the room that understands that, it's probably the current mayor of Nashville. But that said, the underlying consensus was critically important as we began our work, and it maintained itself throughout. With the help of the community, we had additional thoughts and ideas, much of which made its way into this report. And even those areas in which there was not ultimately agreement, those ideas were an important part of the consideration of the subcommittees and ultimately of the task force. And so while there may not be total agreement, there is consensus as well. I think, in fact, I know, that by the time this transit plan is implemented, that we will find as a city, and I believe this is consistent with the goals that you have set for this city, that the needs of affordability, especially as to housing, and as it applies to small business, will also have been met by then, if not sooner. We know this isn't going to be accomplished by transit-oriented developments, or by a transit plan. But as Bob Mendez and others have said, it's a critically important component to the ultimate solution. We started our work by saying every successful city in America is today confronting a challenge with affordability, especially affordability as to housing. The difference from the perspective, perhaps, certainly of the chairs, is that those other cities don't have our transit plan. Those other cities didn't have this task force. And those other cities certainly don't have our mayor. So we are pleased to present to our mayor, Megan Berry, the report of this task force with our thanks.
Well, thank you. And first, I just want to start by thanking Bill Purcell and Brenda Wynn, who stepped up and said that they would do this, and they would do this in the very aggressive timeline and get others that needed to be involved. And I know all of you worked tirelessly for a short amount of time over the holidays to get this to where we need it to be. It is a critical document, and I appreciate that while there is general consensus, that there are some places that we still have some opportunity to work on. I want to thank all of you, because this is a document that is full of wisdom and insight and recommendations, and it's really incredibly impressive. I think it's also a blueprint. It's a blueprint for how transit and affordable housing policies are going to be able to work together in our community, because this is about making Nashville a more equitable community, and this can do that for us. So after I've had a chance to look at the recommendations, so I just want to take a moment and walk through some of the things that I see that I'm particularly excited about. So working with the community to gather data. And to guide policy. I think that's critical. I think looking at some of the recommendations where that is a key piece, where we've got to get all these stakeholders that you've articulated, the business owners, the residents, the political processes, I mean, all these pieces have to be engaged, and we have to make sure that we do this throughout the process. What I don't want anybody to think of is that this work is now done. This is the beginning. Our transit solution, we know, is robust and it's comprehensive, and it is a vision for transit for our future, but there's an incredible amount of work to do to make sure that our community is absolutely involved in the design and the layout, because it's got to fit the neighborhoods and the corridors, and each one of them will be different. I agree that we have to conduct those inventories along those corridors. That's key, way before we start any kind of construction, and even before we do any design of those corridors. We have to have that. We've seen that in other areas of government that well-intentioned policies without that community engagement turns out to be a negative, whether it's a bike lane, whether it's a stop, whether it's a way we're going to change a road. That community engagement has to be on the very front end. Communities absolutely need to know what is happening. They need to know why it's happening. They need to have input into the process as it is happening in order for us to successfully implement these plans. Using the data and then establishing those policies and goals is also key. The data and engagement is going to help us establish, I think, very realistic and achievable goals and targets for small business, mostly around those affordable housing preservations and the expansion. Councilman Mendez mentioned the preservation piece. I think we also have to continue to remember that we're not going to build our way out of this. We actually have to preserve what we have, and I like that part about this. As the recommendations indicate, we have to have firm, fixed targets in place for affordable housing and for the local business development way before the construction begins on these corridors. And oftentimes the conversation around, I think, affordable housing focuses mostly on the development pieces I mentioned, but we're going to make sure it's a comprehensive piece on what the gap is of where we're losing a lot of our housing as well. My staff, and I have a great staff. Can you raise your hand if you're part of the mayor's staff? They continue to research best practices related to displacement prevention. We recently heard about a program that we are very interested in that would extend property tax freeze and relief to low-income homeowners, again, making sure that we're preserving, and that's something we're going to look into. We're working on preservation strategies throughout for the use of our general obligation bonds to purchase and renovate multifamily housing that's at risk of becoming market rate and then becoming unaffordable to workforce families. We've also worked with the Housing Fund to establish a community land trust to help preserve land and property for affordable housing. We know that affordable housing challenge and success is difficult to measure because we have lots of different players in the game. So I think this report, by recommending an annual reporting mechanism, is going to help us create and measure progress along these corridors so that we can actually see what's happening. We also have to work with the small businesses along these corridors to understand their needs and to make sure that construction does not hinder their ability to operate, and that there are some great recommendations in the report on how to do that, providing the technical assistance, providing the parking component, and also just the general information about what's going to happen and being able to communicate. No matter how much study and preparation we do, there's always a learning process to implementation, and many of the policies that are going to be enacted by a future mayor and future metro councils, I think I couldn't agree more that we have to have a baseline for policies so we have that continuity because we want everybody in Nashville to be successful. When we think about the TODs, those transit-oriented redevelopment districts, the authorizing legislation, thank you. We appreciate the state. We appreciate you, and it has, the TOD has the potential to have a huge impact on our city's affordable housing efforts. I appreciate that your recommendations came back to say that at least 20% of subsidies should go to affordable housing as part of this. While those are decisions that ultimately get made by council members and MDHA, my hope is an even greater commitment. I want to see that number be bigger. Those allocations toward affordable housing from TIF in the future should be greater. We currently have in the works the TOD that we're working on in Donaldson, and we're hoping that is going to be a 30% component. So that's what I want to see. I like the recommendations about focus on essential community services also be included in the TOD developments. We know that transit-oriented development only works if people can walk to grocery stores, to their daycare, and to make sure that they don't ever have to get into a car. That's critical. We know that people live a lot healthier lives if they're out walking, and this is also an ability for us to create a healthier community. I appreciate the participation of MDHA and Jim Harbison specifically. I know he helped in this report because they are essential partners in a lot of what we're going to do on TOD. Funding for affordable housing, I think that's really the one that we talk about the most and is the one that we are trying to get our arms around the best. And while TIF absolutely is a great opportunity to generate a lot of funding for affordable housing, that is not going to solve our needs alone. And I see here in your recommendations that you all created dedicated funding for affordable housing equal to, I think, 2% of the $5.4 billion infrastructure investment over the next 15 years. I think that seems really reasonable. And I think that is a critical, important step in creating more affordable housing. I also understand that some of the members thought that this number was too low and that it needed to be closer to 15%. I think at the end of the day, the truth is it's going to take billions of dollars in investment to create the amount of affordable housing that we need as a city in order to meet the needs of our low-income residents. And that investment's going to have to come in a lot of different forms. If we're going to create the type of mixed-income, mixed-use housing that experts say we need in order to have those better socioeconomic outcomes, we've got to do a lot of heavy lifting. And that comes not just from the government, but it comes from the private sector, the not-for-profit sector, and the for-profit sector, as well as state and federal agencies. We're all going to have to be in this together if we're going to make this a reality. I like to look at this as a perspective of tools. What are the tools that we have available? Well, we have pilot programs for affordable housing. It's a relatively recent tool. I know that I want to see more of it. Traditionally, we use it to bring jobs and economic growth to Nashville, but I want to see it to be used on affordable housing. I think we can do it. Instead of the government spending money to create affordable housing, it can reduce or eliminate property tax on properties in order to help fund construction, and that's a great tool. TIF, TIF is out there. We've discussed it. The tax increment financing is also a valuable tool that we can use along our transit corridors to construct those mixed income developments. GO bonds. Currently, we're looking at ways to use this to preserve units, We've got $25 million in GO bonds right now, not building but preserving as a way to closing that housing gap. We know it's a whole lot easier to keep somebody in a house than it is to build a new one. Housing Incentive Pilot Program, our HIP program. We're still working on revising this with the Metro Council, but this I think is a great tool that can help close those gaps in workforce housing, while also making sure that we have inclusionary housing policies that the Metro Council has passed. The Barnes Fund, I do just want to take a moment and just remember Reverend Bill Barnes while we're all sitting around this table. A beautiful light for our city, one that still shines. And we've dramatically increased the funding for the Barnes Fund over the last 2 years, and we're going to continue to do that as long as I'm mayor. But we have to make sure we're maximizing that investment. So we've also put Metro-owned properties into private-public partnerships for workforce development, and we've got that coming out of the ground at 12th and Wedgwood with 150 units, and we continue to use that approach. But I'm going to go back to dedicated funding for just a moment. Give me a second. Something in my throat. So I often hear these comparisons, and I want to talk about it for a second. The comparison of affordable housing to soccer, the Music City Center, to transit. And I think a key reminder for how those funding mechanisms and dedicated sources came about, it came because the state of Tennessee gave us the authorization to do that. The state legislature authorizes the collection of taxes in the tourist development zone to help us fund the convention center. And then the state legislature allowed for a sales tax redirect on the soccer stadium to help fund the lease payments. And the state authorized local governments to raise certain tax surcharges so that we could fund a transit improvement project. I think that there are ways for us to find a dedicated revenue source, and we need to figure out what that is for affordable housing, but we have to remember that there's a really important player in this game, and that's the folks at the state legislature. They have shown repeatedly that they are willing to work with us to identify these very important revenue streams, and I think what we have to make sure that we are doing is helping them understand how critical affordable housing is to Nashville, and we can help get them to help pass something that will give us a dedicated revenue stream here. And with that, I just want to again say thanks. I appreciate everybody in this room today, and we're here today because we know that better public transportation does impact low-income residents and small business owners. We need that impact, though, to be a positive impact, not a negative impact. And we know transportation isn't just about getting from point A to point B. It's not just about that. It's also about how you get yourself and your family to a better life. And what do I mean by that? It means that it gives Nashvillians the best chance to reach all kinds of opportunities by giving them access to jobs, schools, services, health care, and all kinds of opportunities. Most Nashvillians do drive. How many of y'all did? It costs about $12,000 a year on average to buy, own, insure, and maintain a car. Some can't afford a car. Some can't afford a second car for someone else in their household who works. So some folks also have those mobility issues due to health issues, and it's hard for them to drive. And this has a real impact. Nashville is 93rd out of the largest 100 cities in worker access to public transportation. That means our workers can't get to where they need to go on public transportation. And according to the research by the Office of Education, access to public transportation is the one top barrier to graduation. And we know that education is also how you find a better life. I believe that no one's opportunities should be limited because of their access to transportation. We have to provide better mobility for everyone, folks who are disadvantaged, folks who are elderly, and that will provide greater social mobility. Transit can help slash the cost by providing options for households where multiple people need to get around. It also gives people the opportunity to live without the cost of owning a car. Even without a great public transportation system, rents are going to go up. The cost of living is going to go up. And there's going to be increasing inequality. Among Davidson County residents with middle incomes, 57% of the salaries that they make go to pay for just housing and transportation. And it's getting harder and harder, we know, to find that affordable housing in Davidson County. So people have to drive further out. Then they have to come back in, and that impacts their transportation costs. Now, doing nothing about this doesn't solve our problem. So while we can't stop Nashville's growth, there's a lot we can do to make this growth work for Nashville without leaving anyone else behind. The policies, the goals, the outcomes that you all have listed in this report, I believe, really help move us forward. And I think it's best when you guys quote this and say, by the time this plan is fully implemented, the hope of this task force is that the affordable housing needs of this city will be fully met and that the production level will be more closely meeting demand. It's ambitious. It's aspirational. It is a goal that I fully share, because Nashville is not going to be that its city if folks are left behind in our progress. So I want to thank you all again around this table. There's so much good stuff in here. This is not the last conversation that we're going to have. This is the beginning of the conversation that we are going to have. So Mayor and Brenda, Clerk, thank you. I really, it's wonderful to sit in this chair as a mayor today, but I get to sit here with all of these great things that are happening in Nashville because of the people who came before me. And two of them are sitting right next to me, who are part of a mayor's office, were the mayor's office, and created so much of the groundwork that we get to have today. And so I'm grateful for that. It's great to live in a city where so many people want to step up and make a difference. So thanks to all of you who came today. I appreciate it. I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Well, I think, the will of the task force, we could excuse the mayor at this time if we wanted to go. I noticed a banner being unfurled, for example, out on the plaza. Several other things may be occurring in the city
happening
as a whole. Before you leave, I would say, from the chair's perspective, many task forces have met. Over the course of at least our lifetimes, many task forces have reported. I frankly don't know of a task force report that had been so completely read, digested, and responded to by a mayor. And I can speak for at least one mayor in saying that, and also having observed several others. So I think from a task force perspective, to have the mayor come into this meeting and not simply know what you were thinking and saying, but by my count, saying we were not just on the right track, but right, is as much thanks as any task force probably will ever have. So I'm very, very appreciative that you've taken the time to do both of those things here today and reaffirm it. I know that goes for a lot of people in the audience here today as well who have been working on these issues, many of them before there was a task force as well. We're very thankful for that. As you leave, I will thank the other members, particularly by name of your staff. You might hear us call out Adrienne Harris's name, who has been so incredibly helpful. Adrienne. Audra Ladd, who is her, I don't know, left or right arm in this way. Mary Beth Eichert. Sean Breasted. We've never applauded him, ever. I don't know why we applaud him. And Stephanie McCullough, who has been there throughout very strongly, too. You mentioned, and very quickly, Marty Sewell, Jim Harbison, Julie Navarrete, all involved. Every part of the city that was touched came, spoke, engaged, and delivered. So we're very thankful for all of them. And if we might, we'll let Brenda, if not to do the benediction, at least the adjournment.
Let me just say again how grateful I am to have been a part of this process, how grateful I am to all of the task force members, all of the staff who informed our efforts here, and to say to all of the citizens who showed up regularly at our meetings, we were grateful and glad to have you in the spirit of this committee, because a great spirit kind of evolved as we worked through this process.
I can tell.
A spirit of cooperation. And so I would like to say that if our city can come together in that same spirit, then there's nothing we can't accomplish. That affordable housing deficit, gone, eliminated. And so I just thank you all for allowing me to be a part of this, and I thank this group of folks who helped make all of this happen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I'm going to go ahead. I've got to go do some.
That was as close to a benediction as you get. Unless there is other business to come before I'm sorry? Oh, there's a certificate. We actually hadn't told you you'd receive a certificate. I know many of you were not imagining any such incredible response to the amount of work. The mayor said something specifically about your work, and this task force met an extraordinary number of times, so that you know we noticed. And for the community, you came through cold. You came sometimes to Lentz, sometimes to police stations, sometimes to the ground floor of the courthouse, sometimes both places at once, sometimes the wrong place, but we all ultimately ended together. And about that, I'm very, very thankful. So for the purpose of your receiving your certificate and the great thanks of a city, there being no further business to come before the task force, we stand
consider
adjourned.
ourselves adjourned.